Morning all and welcome back to the channel. More suspension work today. It is the day after Boxing Day and in the middle of the North York Moors here, it is very cold. I've just had to lend my MIG welder to 3 brass monkeys. So we're going to brave the chill, get out there in the workshop and carry on with the suspension. Where we left off last time, I've got 2 dangling rear wishbones on the Exocet, so we're going to carry on with that. The top wishbones proved slightly troublesome. I'll explain when we get out to the workshop, but I think we've overcome that. And if we get time over the weekend, which of course now the festivities are nearly over, got time to play in the workshop. If we get time over the weekend, we'll press on and start to fathom out the front. I've had a couple of comments from people on the Facebook Exocet builders group to say, why aren't you building a roller skate and then putting the chassis frame on top? Well, I may well do that in the fullness of time. For people that don't know, when you dismantle an MX-5 and basically take the body off, it leaves you with a roller skate, as they call it, which is effectively the front, spit it out, the front subframe with engine and gearbox in it, the rear subframe with all the suspension parts and the rear differential in it, connected by the drive shaft and something called a power plant frame, which is effectively a steel ladder type piece of chassis that connects the front and rear subframes together. That in its essence is a roller skate, and you'll see that in subsequent videos. And at the moment, I'm not doing that. I'm attaching the rear and front subframes to the chassis and building the suspension parts into a roller. You could then drop in the engine, gearbox, rear differential and so on. But I think once I'm happy that all the parts have been refurbished, they work and they're in the right place and I know what I'm doing, as I've said before, I will dismantle it, build the roller skate at that point, and then drop the chassis on top. I hope that makes sense. It certainly will when we do that in previous videos, but for anyone who was wondering why we're not creating a roller skate on day one, those are the reasons why. So without further ado, let's press out into the cold and see if we can't progress with this suspension. Okay, so these are the top rear suspension wishbones that I've had a problem with. I'll explain more in a minute, but a quick recap on where we got to last time. So we've actually got both sides, the rear suspension arms wishbones fitted to the back of the Exocet onto the subframe. Same on the other side, that's all fitted. I've tried to improve the lighting in here. I won't shine the camera, point the camera at the light because it'll blind everybody. But hopefully when we move to the front, this is better lit now. You'll be able to see what's going on. But let me take you back to the bench as we circumnavigate the chassis and show you where I've got to. So the problem I had with the energy suspension bushings, I say bushings, I guess these are the bushings, and I've fitted the bushings into the 2 control arms. They went in no problem whatsoever. And then the sleeve fits into the bushing. That goes in no problem whatsoever. But the bolts, which aren't now particularly rusty, as you can see, I've cleaned them up on the wire wheel and with some, I actually soaked all the nuts and bolts in vinegar, and then I've given them a spin on the wire wheel. They didn't fit through the centre of these spacers as they do now. So I've had to take these 4 spacers down to the kit car factory. For those of you who've watched the first video in the Humble Nomad Automotive series, you'll realise that we're building more than 1 kit car, and in fact own a kit car called the V2, soon to become the Humble Nomad 1, which is a prototype kit car. Only a handful have ever been made, and that's in I say factory, little industrial unit down on the south side of the North York Moors. And in there I'm lucky enough to have a tiny sort of hobby lathe really. So I nipped down there with these 4 metal inserts, ran a 10mm drill bit on the lathe through the centre, and that seems to have solved the problem. Almost, they're still a bit tight as you can see. But for a 350 quid set of energy suspension polyurethane bushings and kit that came all the way from the States, I would have expected it to fit. But there we are. We are building a car, not assembling one, as the automotive world keeps telling me. So it's time now, I think, to assemble these upper suspension arms and get them attached to the car. So I'll put you on the tripod and give it a go. As I mentioned, the bolts didn't fit through these. They do now, some better than others. They're still a little bit tight, but I think that's tight, only slightly, but not something I couldn't get in and out fairly easily. Doesn't go in that way as easily as it does that one. So I might ream those out slightly until they're all a bit smoother. That one's fine. So there's I think only one that's a bit of a problem. However, not to be deterred at this point, these are the bushings that go in that end. So here, now, I think what we need to do is get the horrible grease. This is grease that came with a polyurethane kit, and as I've said before, I think in the previous video, it is absolutely horrendous. In fact, it's so horrendous, it's pretty much glued these gloves together. I think I'll go with one. Let's see if we can't do it with one. So I'll take this and the glue. It's not helped by the fact that it's Baltic in here today. So I think the grease would be significantly easier to deal with were it runnier. Or maybe it'd just be a nightmare and even stickier, who knows. But let's get one of these lubed up, so to speak. And then it should press into there fairly easily, but we have the benefit here, of course, of I'm not going to push this there. That goes in an absolute joy. It's dead easy. I'm not pushing that hard. I'm not forcing it in any way. It's just running round. As I say, it's fairly big jaws on this vise, so not damaging the bush. And I can feel it's reached the other side. You can feel that it's hard. So again, that should be. And that's in perfectly, and now the bolt fits. So given that these bushings are basically the pivot point, actually I'm not sure they are. I think what happens now is that the bolt pinches that when it's torqued up, and the arm and the bushings move, hence the grease, unlike the rubber original bushings, which were set in place within the control arm and then they flexed to give you a degree of almost preload, I suppose. That, however, is as simple as that. So I will load up the other 3 steel inserts and then we can get these on the car. Right, so bottom wishbone's in place, top wishbone now with the bushings in it. Let's take these bolts out. Let me just position it. So these bushings and the metal sleeves that go through them, when this is torqued up, when these bolts are torqued up, it pinches the metal sleeve against the subframe bracket effectively. So what I'm going to do for the time being is I'm going to put some copper slip on these bolts rather than larruping the inside of the suspension arm or the sleeve with any more of that hideous stuff, because A, these might want to come off, and B, because we're pinching it up, it doesn't move, so it's not in a position where we need it to flex. So there we are. Now that's the upper and lower wishbone, looking pretty, painted black. Needs the nuts on the ends, which I will just wire wheel up and pop on. But this, now, if I can wrestle it into position, is the, shall we say, yet to be refurbished rear hub. So I had the foresight to loosen the hub nuts when they were on the car with the air gun. So I think once we've fitted the suspension parts front and rear, it's time to dismantle and refurbish this rear upright. Upright, hub, call it what you will. I'm just showing you that that effectively is the wrong way around. Bloody hell, this is heavy. Right, that effectively sits in there, and then that in there. So you get the idea, but I can't put this hub back on as it is because it's a disgrace. So I will, off camera, fit the other side upper suspension arm to the subframe, put on the nuts. This copper grease gets everywhere, look. Put on the nuts, and we're making progress. Time to turn our attention to the rear suspension. This is pretty much the same as the front suspension. So the bush metal spacer, the bushes push in to the suspension arm, and then the sleeve goes into the rubber bushing, or should I say polyurethane bushing. So fairly straightforward. That is the front lower wishbone, and this is the front upper wishbone with the bolts and the spacers ready to go, so you can see what goes on. But this is slightly different in that I pressed out and got rid of the old ball joint, and here is one I made earlier. So this is a new ball joint. Basically, I say basically, this is a new ball joint. There's no basically about it. So if you take the split pin out and unbolt it, take the nut off even. I think this is just a cover. Yeah. So that's the new ball joint, which needs pressing into there. Yeah, must go in that way. So if I get that lubed up and press it in on the press, that goes back into its housing, all well and good. But what I'm thinking is, once that's in place, it might make sense to put 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe spot welds around this plate. So I'm going to clean the black paint away there, and I'm wondering whether it's worth pressing that in and welding it before putting in the bushings, because it could melt the bushings. It can't though, can it? Because what's more in danger of melting would be this rubber. So if I'm going to just put 4 tiny spot welds on, chances are I don't need to worry about it, because that would melt before these will. So stop waffling, put that back on, put on the nut. Let's get that back in the box and install these bushings so that we can have a crack at putting them on the front of the car. Right, so here we are at the front. This is subframe meets chassis. A little bit of dust. But basically, this is, there we go, basically again, this is where the upper wishbone fits. So, I have here a bolt that passes through there, which I'm guessing, shouldn't guess really, but must go in that way because fouls on the chassis that way. So that's answered one query. I'll check that in the MX5 book, but basically you can see how that works, and that runs all the way through front to back. So this should be as easy as that. However, because this is, as I said earlier, we need to press in the new ball joint. This is a temporary fit, but fit it does. But I am going to nip it up so we can see that everything's working properly. Let me just grab the anti-slip. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute, because, well, for 2 reasons really. Because it's coming undone, the anti-slip's never a bad thing. But as I said, when discussing the rear of the, when discussing the rear parts of the suspension, the bushings, so the polyurethane bushes themselves, seem to be, given the reading and research I've done, the things that turn. And the bushings internally, sorry, what would you call them? The steel sleeves don't turn. So to all intents and purposes, obviously don't want that seizing inside the tube. So to all intents and purposes, when the tension's on, they stop moving. Now, slight mistake I've made here. There's washers, enormous washers that go on the outside to protect the bushings themselves. Let's put those on. Back in, goes through there. That goes on there. And I guess that would then pull, when I tighten this up, that's going to pull the bushings into each other and put the washer flush with the bush. Let's see, shall we? So these are enormous. That's 20, these are 21 mil. Odd sort of size 21 mil, but 21 mil they are. Am I unscrewing that? Yes, I am. Let's turn that round. Yeah, so 21 mil. So I'm expecting here this to pull the washers to squash the bush. Is that the right word? Sleeve. So I can see from here now the sleeves on the inside are tight up against the frame, which is what's made that tight. And the whole of the bushing, the rubber bushing, the sleeve is not moving, and the bushing on the outside is rolling around the sleeve. Sorry, the rubber bushing is sliding up and down on the steel sleeve. The steel sleeve isn't moving. So I think you get the idea, you get what I'm talking about. So that it works very differently to the original rubbers where the whole rubber used to flex. So that's the front one on. From a practical point of view, I should probably have done the bottom one first so I've been able to see what I'm doing. However, I can just move that up there out the way. So onwards and upwards, let's go and get the bushes in the bottom arm and then we can come back and install that. Right, before we install this lower wishbone on front left hand side of the car, I think it's probably worth investigating fitting the new ball joint. If not, fitting the new ball joint. So that's pretty much what you get. Let's have a look what else is in the bag. No idea what that is. Bolt, which I'm guessing, yep, goes through there. What have we got here? We have here, I think that is the bolt that goes in there, which will replace then the old bolt that's come out. So these, yeah. So I guess I don't need those. Look slightly shorter. Get those lubed up before they go in. What else have we got? So in the bag, it's in the bag. In the bag we have split pin for there. Okay, that needs screwing down before I'm going to get the split pin in. Don't need to worry too much about that today. And 1, 2, 3 washers and a nut. Right, let's get this detritus out of the way. So I'm guessing then, nuts for the other end of there. 2 washers, 1 for each of those. 1 washer for there. So, right, that's that. Let's get this apart. Is that a cover that we dispense with? I think it is. I think that's just for transportation purposes. Take the bolt out. Right, so this I think goes in here. How's that? Bang on. And you see that? Once it's in, I'll be able to get that other nut in there. So You just double check that you can see all of this. Yes, I think you can. See if we can't tap that in a little further. Right, pretty much there. So if you can see inside there, let's do one job at a time then. See if we can't line that up first. We're there. I think we're pretty much there. May have just bonked you on the head. Right, so then that would go in here. Washer, nearly made a schoolboy error. Okay, we haven't quite got that lined up then, have we? Or have we? Can't be far off. Right, just going to take that out. But not easily. Okay. So, that's the ball joint moving around, all good. That looks pretty good to me. Let's just get something to persuade it into position. Looks pretty good there. Let's try the other side. There we are. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So before I put that bolt in there, let's grab the anti-seize, which is down on the floor. Anti-seize. Was I calling it anti-slip earlier in the video? I think I was, you know. Losing me marbles. So anti-seize. Let's try again. Because if in doubt, we can always lock wire the nuts and bolts on if the shank has been anti-seized. That way, in my mind, you'll get it off again because it's anti-seized, and it'll stay on because you've lock wired it. Am I talking tosh? Who knows? Right, let's put the bolt in. I don't want to give this too much persuasion and damage the bolt, but seems to me that's in. Turn it round so you can see what's going on. Nut on the other side. Washer. Now, how big? Should we guess at 17 mil? Oh, it's a 19. Gutted. Right. 19 mil. They've supplied an eye lock, which is not what we had before. I suppose, is that an improvement? I guess it is. 19 on both ends. Yeah, a little mini 19 here then. And let's just nip that up. But before I make it too tight, in fact, 19 little ratchet would be better, wouldn't it? The right way round. 19 mil. Go on, cooking on gas now. Before I nip it up, I'm going to put this one in, which again has its own nut. Sorry, doesn't need a nut because it bolts into the actual framework of the, basically look, that's lined up, drops down in there. I don't know if you can see that. Drops down into the actual brand. Hey! Washer. Washer. What's going on with washers? Drops down into there. And if that's a 19, let's pinch a T-bar. 19-inch T-bar would probably do the best job. Are we going in? Not quite, not yet. Yeah, we are now. And I'm thinking this has been better than doing it after it's on the car. So hopefully you can see that. So that's the ball joint in. I'll just tweak up what 19mm with the T-bar. Just tweak up the, what am I doing? 19 on there, 19 on there. Tweak this up. We're working on the basis that that was just a cover for transportation. Castle nut on here. On here. Castle nut goes on there. Just enough to put our lock. Try and get a bit of tension on it. And then I won't lose a split pin. Nearly. Getting there, one more half turn, basically backing it out until such time as there's a bit of friction. One more. There we are. And a tiny little bit of movement on it. So that should stay. Right, so I think that is pretty much, when it's had a little bit of ACF 50 down into the bits that might rust, because it can't do any harm at all. And rust, I hate rust. Don't think I could ever have a classic car. Well, I'd have to strip it down and make it concourse. Now, observations. Number one, that nut doesn't go very far on there, so we're tight in, and that bolt with 2 washers on has not given us much to play with on the nut end. So might be better reverting to the old nut and bolt that came out. In fact, let's investigate that now, because there's no better time than the present. Yeah, looks a bit small to me, that. Oh, looks as though it's not getting the purchase that I'd like it to get. This is the one that came out. Yeah, I think the reason this is a better bet is because it isn't a nylock and doesn't have washers. So, as a consequence of that, you get more purchase on the bolt. The alternative, welcome to my world, by the way, I'm rambling the thoughts that are going in inside my head. If we lose the washers, because there is what I'd almost say that there's washers, sort of integral washers on the actual, can you see that? Integral washers on the actual arm. So, without the washers, which I think might be the best bet all round, we'll get a new bolt, plenty of purchase, and there'll be no need, and plenty of purchase, which is the main idea really. I wasn't happy with how much purchase we were getting on that. Doesn't fit. This way, that doesn't fit. Okay, so if we bolt this on as far as we can and see how that looks. We've got more to go, we're not there yet, and I've got some bolt poking out, not as much as I'd like yet. Let's have a look, keep going. We've obviously got our third point of contact. Okay, that's tight. That nut's in and hasn't moved. We're basically relying on these integral washers there, I think. And we've got the tip of the bolt there. It's better. That's the best scenario, I think. So short of changing those bolts for even longer ones, which is not impossible, I think that's the best scenario. So if we just pop that split pin back in for a second, give it a little bend but not much, I think pretty much that's ready to go on the car. Bushes are in, the ball joint's on, everything's tightened up. Let's give that just a little bit of ACF 50. And you can meet me over at the car and we'll try and wrestle that into place. Okay, here we are back at the front. I've got a light up above where we are. Hopefully that's not blinding the camera. This is the arm we've just put together. So to give you an idea, it basically, well, basically, it's no basically about it. It goes in there like that. So we have the same camber alignment bolts, or very similar camber, same principle. If that'll sit like that. Yep. The same camber alignment bolts that you get at the back. So not having any idea where these go at this particular juncture, I think we'll just put them in as best we can, making sure we miss the two flanges that sit between. That's good. Try and get the scale on the outsides this time, unlike on the back. Not on there. The only schoolboy error this time, because we're full of them, is that I haven't put any anti-seize on it. So, back to the workbench. So, oh no, broken my paintbrush. Dropped it. Never mind, it's not the end of the world. Right, so I've now got a very short paintbrush. Yeah, I think we'll get anti-seize on this for all the reasons we've discussed all afternoon. Again, I think when we take the subframes away from the chassis and then at that point build the roller skate up, that's the point at which, my head in the way there, apologies. That's the point at which I think we could make sure all the torque settings are right. So, you know, this stuff seems to have washers on it. Didn't have washers on it when it came off. And by adding washers, I suppose they're the alignment. Yeah, they are the washers, aren't they? Shut up, boy, talking tosh. Yes, they are washers, of course. So that's tight, but it's not torqued. You know what I mean? There we go. So same on this side. I'm working on the basis that, well, actually in this case I know that the flanges, the bolts rather, go from the inside out. They always seem to go from the inside out. Don't know if that's a Mazda thing, but there's plenty of room here to back them out into. If you've got any bodywork or stuff going on the other sides, like here, it would be harder, I guess, to get them out. So, makes perfect sense. I've got to say that Mazda, as the also works out now, you've got to put the scale for alignment on the outside. We're learning. Not on. Oh, sack the juggler. Put a bit of anti-seize on the end there. That gives us. Now, my observation here will be that that bolt is massive in comparison to that bolt. So, bear with me and let me grab my bolts for the other one. I wonder if they come in two different sizes. So these are for the other side, and I would say no. They look right to me. So the only possibility is that we have used the wrong ones on the back, which I can check, but they fitted and they were all of equal length. So maybe they're just, that's how they are. I will double check, but for the time being, let's get it into place. That also feels like it's not going on properly, so I'm not very happy with that. Could be the nut that needs tap running through it, or the bolt that needs a die running down it. As we've got the other two here, they're all of a similar size. Well, they're all exactly the same size. Let's lube up this one. Again, I think last video or the one before when we were discussing this, I'm half tempted, once we've got this together and we know where everything goes and everything's working and it's just a roller on the floor, you know, it's a rolling chassis, not about to go around the Nürburgring in it at that point. So we could then replace all this hardware. But that's an expensive hobby, let me tell you. So let me try this bolt. Again, same length as the other three, so it's not going to give us any less excess. What I'm finding is some bolts, some nuts and bolts got a lot of excess, some nuts and bolts struggling to get purchased. I mean, there's a good 10mm sticking out there and that's barely gone through. So, well, it has gone through though, so not complaining totally. But let's nip it up. Yeah, nipped up there. So that's the bottom, that's the top. These two ball joints will meet eventually, and the suspension, the shock absorber should come down through there. But remember this, I think from a previous video we mentioned that this, which had the banana piece that bolts into there, means you should be cutting that out. I don't like that idea, so, and if I am going to have to cut this up to get the shock absorber in, I may redesign a top wishbone. But at the moment, you can see that's where we are, everything's in. I'll check the bolt lengths, make sure that we've got the right camber bolts in the right places. To be fair, I think it's pretty much, it's difficult to get them in the wrong place because they don't fit anywhere else. So the ones in the back I don't think would fit in the front, but I'll just double check. And if not, we're all ready to go. So we've got a ball joint to put in there, obviously, and then we can offer up the shock absorbers, which I got second-hand shock absorbers, fairly standard, the Bilstein shocks, but they're in fairly good condition, so I'm going to use them for the time being. But I think that's it. If I do the same on the other side, then we'll have made some progress, and you can join me in the next video when we will probably, I think, have a look at fitting those shocks and seeing how much they foul on here, and then we've got the hubs to consider. Please click the like button, subscribe for more content of this nature, and join me again on the next one.